said the king. Herald, thou hear'st in him the voice entire of all our peers, to answer thee for that of Priam's son. But for our burning of the dead, by all means I am one to satisfy thy king therein, by all means I am one to satisfy thy king wherein, to satisfy thy king therein, without the king therein. I am one to satisfy thy king therein, without the slenderest gain made of their spoiled carcasses, but freely being slain, they shall be all consumed with fire. To witness which I cite high fire. To witness which I cite high thundering Jove, that is the king of Juno's bed's delight. Is the king of Juno's bed's delight. King of Juno's bed's delight. Of Juno's bed's delight. With this he held his scepter up to all the sky-throned powers, and grave Idaeus did return to sacred Ilion's towers, where Ilians and Dardanians did still their counsels ply, expecting his return. He came and told his legacy. All whirlwind-like assembled then, some bodies to transport, some to hew trees. On the other part, the Argives did. On the other part, to hew trees. On the other part, trees. Hew trees. On the other part, the Argives did exhort their soldiers. On the other part, the Argives did exhort their soldiers to the same affairs. On the other part, the Argives. The Argives did exhort their soldiers to the same affairs. Then, on the other part, the Argives did exhort their soldiers to the same affairs. Then did the new-fired sun smite the broad fields, ascending heaven, and the ocean smooth did run. When Greece and Troy mixed in such peace, you scarce would either know. Then washed they off their blood and dust, and did warm tears bestow upon the slaughtered, and in cars conveyed them from the field. Priam commanded none should mourn, but Priam commanded field. Priam commanded none should mourn, but in none should mourn, but in still silence yield their honored carcasses to fire, and only to fire retire, to fleet, and only grieve and all burn carcasses to fire, and only grieve in heart. All burned to Troy, Troy's friends retire, to fleet appear, part. Yet doubtful night retire, to fleet the Grecian part. Round, yet doubtful night the Grecian part. Yet doubtful night obscured the earth, and only grieve in heart. All burned to Troy, Troy's friends retire, to fleet the Grecian part. Yet doubtful night obscured the earth, the day did not appear when round about the day did not appear when round about the funeral pyre the Grecians gathered were. The pile they circled with a tomb, and by it raised a wall, high tower, raised a wall, high tower, raised a wall, high towers to guard the fleet and them, and in the midst of all they built strong gates, through which the horse and chariots passage had. Strong gates, through which they built strong gates, through which the horse and chariots passage had. Without the rampire a broad dike, long and profound they a broad dike, long and profound a broad dike, long and profound they made, on which they palisadoes pitched. And profound they made, long and profound, which they palisadoes pitched, on which they found they made those pitched. And thus the Grecians profound they made, on which they palisadoes pitched. And thus the Grecians wrought. Their huge works in so little time were to perfection brought, that all gods by the lightner set, the frame thereof, the lightner set, by the lightner set, the frame thereof admired, mongst whom the earthquake-making god of this their king inquired. Mongst whom the earth gods will their king with any actions there, mongst whom the earthquake-making, mongst whom the of this their king inquired. Mongst whom the earthquake-making god of this, mongst whom the earthquake of admired, mongst whom the earthquake-making